Welcome to the Casey Cease Show. Casey is your entrepreneurial guide. Dive into weekly insights that blend inspiration with practical strategies to grow your business with integrity. From boosting sales to building strong relationships, Casey shares the essentials to help both your venture and personal dreams flourish. Ready to elevate your entrepreneurial journey? Let's dive in.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Casey Cease Show. Today, I have a special guest, my longtime friend, Kenny Jahng. Kenny and I met several years ago in a Christian entrepreneur group on Facebook, and then we met at conferences and along the way, and he has had really a big impact on me, more than he realizes, and we've had the opportunity to serve in various capacities together over the years, and I admire him very much, and he's an entrepreneur that creates resources, tools, and environments for the church and has a heart for the God's kingdom, but is a brilliant marketing, business, MBA, pastoral, theological mind, all those different things. And so, Kenny, it's an honor to have you on the show. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other quite a bit, but why don't you give a little bit more clarity to the broad background I gave and share a little bit about, who you are and what you're working on these days?
Absolutely. I need you to call me in the morning and introduce me because
I will.
every day will be a great day then.
It's going to be a great day, man. That's it.
Yeah, basically, I'm an entrepreneur, much like you. And I think that's why we're kindred spirits. I think if you look at all the things that I'm involved in, that entrepreneurial thread brings order to the chaos in terms of explaining how I operate. It's basically, and it's you and I dreaming together on things where we see problems. And then we just have the gall to say, hey, maybe we can figure out how to make a dent in that problem and just rally resources together, be creative, and try to figure out how to solve that problem for a specific group of people. And so for the church, that has been it. I've worked a long time in the marketplace, and the church world, pastoring has been a second career. And so bringing those marketplace best practices to ministry just has been a joy in this chapter of life. And so that's where I am. We're trying to figure out how to just do more good for people.
Well, how did that transition take place for you, though, Kenny, where you're in the corporate world, you're in the marketplace,
Yeah.
and were you always entrepreneurial, or is it something that you kind of pushed away for a while? How did it come to shifting gears from the marketplace into really starting your own companies and helping other people start businesses and stuff?
Yeah, that entrepreneurial gene, I think, was planted in me early on when I was a child. I mean, like, I remember I made my first sponsored T-shirt, I think, in 6th grade. Like, a bunch of us during the summer wanted to play capture the flag, and me and my buddies went knocking doors, to the local five and dime shop, and got a couple of stores to pitch in, and we designed a T-shirt. We were 6th graders. We didn't know how to even like drive, right? And so we got I forget who it was, a friend's older brother drove us to this print shop, and we made T-shirts with logos. And we had a lot of fun. So we were able to give out free T-shirts to everybody. We had a big party. We played capture the flag. I remember that was like the big thing that summer. And that was, I guess, beginning of the entrepreneurial journey. I think since then, there's just been so many different things where I think that idea of, wow, you can create something out of thin air as long as you can dream it. And so that's been the journey. I mean, I think you'll see that, echo throughout my whole vocational career.
No, I have seen it just in the years that we've known each other. And so talk to us a little bit about bridging that gap from the marketplace
Yeah.
and the transition. What led to the transition? Where did you start out? Where did you go to? Because you've had a pretty broad experience, and I think our listeners would enjoy hearing about that.
Yeah. So again, for me in the marketplace, it was about communications, advertising, marketing. So I worked in a traditional ad agency as an account executive. I went to
So were you a madman? A madman from Mad Men?
kind of down in the South. I was in a boutique agency, worked on accounts like Caterpillar Construction Products and Andy's Candies, those little green thin
Yeah.
mints, and some high-tech software accounts, and really, did the pitches for concepts and TV commercials and all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of fun. From there, I went to business school and I studied at Columbia entrepreneurial management. And so that's where I got the bug of saying, oh, this is the place I want to be. From there, I worked in a venture catalyst incubator. So we had a portfolio of, I think, like 19 companies on 3 continents. And
Wow.
we were working, night and day trying to figure out how to make things work. And so that was an exciting period of time. I think that DNA got into my blood, that entrepreneurial DNA. And then from there was a parallel track on my faith walk that I just became deeply involved with church and my own spiritual journey. And it just made sense at some point. I feel like God yanked me out and said, you know what, you need to go to seminary. You didn't grow up in the church, you didn't work in the church. I need you to, basically get, turbo boosted into getting up to speed, and seminary is a good place. And so off I went to, Princeton Seminary and got my MDiv. And then, naturally everything just shifted from marketplace to ministry stuff. And here we are today.
Well, I have to admit, I took the route of did entrepreneurship when I was young and then transitioned to more pastoral ministry. And you know my story, how I got started
Yeah.
speaking as part of probation from my accident I was in to starting a nonprofit and doing business and realizing I was gifted at business. But when I speak with you from early on, I'm like, okay, this guy, like level of strategy and thinking is like, it's cool to see how the Lord's redeemed that for kingdom
Yeah.
work. But talk about a combination of turbocharge, of hard work, but also of just you're so generous with it. And I think because you're such a certain presence though, like it can be intimidating sometimes because I remember one of the first times I was talking with you about something, you're like, well, why are you doing it that way? And I was like, what?
Yeah. Okay. Couple of thoughts here.
Yeah.
So first, to the point, nature you're talking about, I think comes from two factors. One, I'm a, Long Island and Jersey boy. I lived in New York City for years. And so I feel like that's part of the
Yeah.
ethos there. Just get to the point. I think the other one is that being a part of that venture catalyst, when you're in a startup environment and you really start to understand what that phrase is, and we've talked about it before, you have to fail fast, to fail forward. You
Yeah.
have to fail fast. If you're going to succeed, if you're going to actually understand where you're trying to go is not anywhere close to where you are today. You've got a long path to go before you get to success. You need to figure out how to speed that trip up. And I think that's, for me, it's almost, this might be odd for some people to hear, but that curtness and directness is an act of love, right?
It
At
is.
least in the startup world. If you're in Silicon Valley, right, or Silicon Alley in Manhattan, that's an act of love of giving direct feedback and to point out what I see as from my wisdom and experience so that you don't repeat the same mistakes I have in whatever that story might be. Like, I think that is hopefully helpful of service to somebody on the receiving
Well,
end.
and I think to that end, Kenny, I mean, the definition of love, nowhere in scripture talks about being fluffy and warm and fuzzy, right? It is sacrificial, but also helpful and meaningful. No, and I wasn't put off by it because I could tell that because just with that same side, you would come in, what about if you tried this? How about this?
Yeah.
How can I help you do this? You've always brought that, but no, it is a kindness. But I do think that, I mean, it was a different level, man, from your startup background and like asking questions to think about things that I would never think about, right? And I've been a member, I've come to some of your masterminds as a
Yeah.
participant. I've come and been on your crew to help serve the people
Yeah.
you're serving. But just watching the gravity of what you're actually saying you want to do, that you're living into it. And it's really cool to see because you see a lot of times, it's funny, like the undercurrent that people don't really say out loud sometimes, but like people go to into church work because they can't quite cut it in the
Yeah.
professional work, but it's like when the Lord disrupts men like you and women who have a drive and a giftedness, and your valuation of God's kingdom becomes so grand that you start thinking different of why wouldn't I use everything I have towards this end in
Yeah.
this
Well, it
way?
didn't start that way.
No.
So, like, when I went into seminary, I honestly thought I would end up on the other side of it as a word and sacrament pastor in a small church and throw away everything that I had
Interesting.
accumulated in terms of experience in the marketplace. And it was through seminary and through that internship. You get an internship
Mhm.
while you're in seminary, and I served in Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City in their Center for Faith and Work. And they actually had something called the Entrepreneurship Initiative. They had a business plan competition that I helped run where Redeemer invested in for profit, nonprofit, and the arts ventures, which was back then totally unheard of in a church space.
Right.
For me, it was totally dynamic and creative and really starting to figure out, wow, this is amazing that God built me this way. God has gifted me with these experiences, and now He wants me to steward that to serve others. That was mind blowing. I would say really was earth shattering for that period of time to say, wow, I came into seminary this way, and you're telling me I'm not going out that way. I'm going out this other door. And so that has been a great journey. So faith and work integration has been amazing for me. I think you look at the theology of work project that I've been able to help in the past, and Now you see a faith-driven entrepreneur, that whole movement happening. There's so many things happening in the faith and work movement, and I love it, right? It's just an amazing thing right now.
Well, so talk to us about some of the projects over the time. When was it that you made that transition? How long have you now been serving the church in this capacity?
So I went to seminary late. So it was 2011 that I graduated. So what is that? It's almost 15 years now
Yeah.
I've been out. And so that has been the pivotal point, the inflection point in the career. Before then, I was, consulting, doing e-commerce strategy and, online marketing, that kind of stuff. And slowly everything has shifted where it's not trying to, build leads for customers and revenue, but it's building leads for congregational communities and for donor development and supporters and volunteers, right? It's you have all these principles in the marketplace that are totally transferable. I think some people have a little bit of an allergic reaction that says, "Oh, church is not a business." But I will say, there's a lot of stuff in seminary that they don't teach you on the practicalities of running an organization, leadership developments, and honestly, marketing
Right.
and communications. All that stuff needs to happen if you want a thriving ministry. And especially today, the digital end of it is even more so, more important today, right? You would say that it probably is almost critical for you as a ministry leader to understand that today. Otherwise, you're going to be invisible on the map of the mobile phone where everyone lives.
Absolutely. So talk about some of the projects that you've started since that time. What are some of the companies that you've either built or have acquired over that time?
AI, right? And so again, I think this is a very typical case study of what I've been able to navigate and try to build resources and come together. So I myself, I'm not a PhD in machine learning or CS major or anything like that, but I've been using AI tools for a while. ChatGPT came out, and all of a sudden things happened, right? Everything they become the media poster child for AI. And so I quickly, started a community because in any innovation front, you have to understand that you're not the expert. You can't understand everything. Last month, I think over 1,000 AI apps launched in 30 days, right? Every single month there's AI apps launching. And so no one can know it all. You need a community of others to learn together. And so we have a private Facebook group of church leaders. I think we're on our way to 6,000 members
Wow.
where it's hyperactive, right? Everyone's, dipping in there every single day, trading notes, how experimenting, seeing what's new, what they can do with it. We've created a video library of training. We do monthly workshops. And so that has just been an engine that has grown. I think very similarly coming out of the pandemic, another problem, as you might say, that I saw was mental health. And so back then we started this thing called Thrive and Cultivate. It was, it's an online summit for mental health education for church leaders. And this year it's in its fourth year. We've had everyone from John Acuff, Carlos Whitaker, Carrie Newhoff, Kay Warren, Rick Warren's wife on there. And so we've been able to build both a community and a resource that I think rivals any of the larger organizations in that vertical, in that niche of mental health. And so I think the internet has done a great thing. Seth Godin says that the sweet spot of the internet is aggregating like-minded people that are not together and bring them all together. And I think just I've seen the power of that. The internet's an amazing thing. We have to thank Al Gore for inventing the internet, Casey,
Thank you,
right?
Al Gore. That's right. If it wasn't for him inventing the internet, where would we be? We wouldn't be
Where would
friends.
we be, Al?
We, we wouldn't be friends, Kenny. That's for sure. No, and I think walking that line, of faith and work as you work
Yeah,
and add resources, what are some of the challenges that you've faced in entrepreneurship and service to the church? Or
yeah.
tensions maybe you've had to explore or anything like that?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is a lonely craft, or it can be. You don't have an installed base of, well, in any office, there's friends and enemies and frenemies too, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you don't have that instant community that you're a part of. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's very easy to go down this rabbit hole and have this desperation of you have to make it work. So you just got to work harder and you just isolate yourself. And then there's the FOMO of social media that we all, understand that everyone else seems to be doing better than where you are, or you thought you would be further along than where you're. And so for me, community has always been one of those things that has been a lifesaver and also something that's life serving. It adds to the flourishing of anybody in that community. And so that's where, you've participated in the mastermind groups that we've done. We do mastermind retreats for Christian entrepreneurs. We do masterminds for executive pastors. I think that is the reason. And those two subgroups in particular, executive pastors as well as entrepreneurs, the common bond that they share is that it's a lonely craft,
It
right?
is.
It's a lonely position and role. And meeting with other people that are your tribe, that get you, that understand what you go through, just gives you an immediate sense of fellowship and vulnerability so that you can actually, just hold each other accountable and inspire each other and really cheer each other on in a way that's a lot more authentic than, just water cooler talk in an office, right? And
Yeah,
so,
and I mean, you know, you're a weird bird in the church if you're an entrepreneur or if you're an executive pastor, because executive pastors are good at business or
yes,
business type things or
yes,
organized or actually care about statistics.
yes,
And, they can sometimes be segmented off like they're cold and no care, but a church without an executive pastor type person typically flounders, right?
yes,
And the same thing with entrepreneurship. If there are those crazy people out there taking those risks that are typically very generous with their time and money and resources and feel lucky to be there. But it's kind of like, I mean, I experience it all the time. I mean, I don't have that many entrepreneur friends locally. And so it's like, oh, that's cool. What exactly do you do?
yes.
That sounds super risky. And I said, what would be risky for me is getting a 9 to 5 job and going to that every day. Getting a 9 to 5 job would be risky for me.
Ready to skyrocket your business and truly connect with your audience on a whole new level? Unleash the power of your story with Lucid Books. Imagine transforming your insights and experiences into a captivating book that not only cements your status as a thought leader, but also weaves a strong bond with your ideal clients. At Lucid Books, we're more than a publishing house. We're your creative partners on a journey to turn your wisdom into a masterpiece that speaks directly to the hearts and minds of your audience. Join forces with us, and let's embark on this incredible adventure together. Your story has the power to inspire, engage, and elevate. Are you ready to share it with the world?
And so, as you look at the last few years coming out of the pandemic, you're doing the church AI thing. You're talking to me earlier about Church Bundle. What's going on with Church Bundle? What are you offering
Yeah.
churches and leaders there? I think it's a great
So,
idea also.
again, I think if you want to nerd out on the business side, right? Every business needs customers. Every ministry and organization needs a supporter base. And so, crass way to talk about it is everyone needs more leads. Top of the funnel is what we talk about in marketing, right? And
Yeah.
so, in a couple of different circles that I've been in, it's just been that the leads is the thing that is of most importance. And so, churchbundle.com again is just another whack at that problem to see if we can solve it for multiple people at once.
Yeah. So, how did you guys come up with that idea? You and Michael.
Yeah. So again, I think we were with a bunch of people at a mastermind retreat, and it was a recurring theme that they're looking for better qualified leads, and how do we get them? And so that was one of those things that triggered, like, what if we worked on it together? What if we all collaborated together? Is there efficiencies at scale that we can actually take advantage of? And that's how it started. So basically, every single month, we have a group of partners that we pull together. We all collaborate and create some amazing bundle of resources for churches. We give it away completely for free. You got to have lead with generosity.
Yep.
In exchange of that ethical bribe of a lead magnet, of a bundle, we get the contact information that gets shared with each of those partners. And it's a win for everybody. And so that has been a very good, a model that has been evolving.
Yeah, that church bundle idea I think is really helpful for the church. And I mean, it is. People want to connect. And so lead gen is, for us marketers, we talk about, well, we need top of funnel leads and all that. But what you're saying is we want to connect people who are interested in these type of products with companies that we trust and rely on to deliver these type of products and services.
Yeah.
And what I always tease, even at our own church, I'm like, like, well, we probably should talk through marketing. I mean, you mean communications? Because I always tease like in the church, they just have a weird thing with marketing. And it's like, hey, you want to help connect people who would very much appreciate and benefit from what you're offering and help them become
Yeah.
aware and engaged and plug in with where they're going. As you look forward in the future, you have a great pulse on, culture, the trends in the church and everything else. As you see AI coming in, I still have friends down here in Texas that think AIs are the devil and it is the Antichrist, might actually be AI. But most people are open or curious about it. But as you see technology in the church, business in the church, marketing in the church, faith in the workplace, things like that. What are you noticing? Are there any trends that are coming our way or that we're transitioning to or that we need to be on the lookout for in the coming months or years?
Oh, there's the whole bunch of things. I think the church needs a reboot to understand where they are in terms of the relevance to society and culture.
Yep.
I think previously churches had an installed base and an audience that just assumed interest. And now you have to demonstrate your relevance. And I think that's the part that's totally missing. Even in that church bundle thing on the business side, I think businesses don't get it either consistently. So both sides, I think, has to understand the with them, right? The what's in it for me is something that you have to identify for your audience, not for you, whether you're the church ministry or business. You know what you want. But you got to figure out what your actual customer, your audience really wants, and then figure out how to put yourself in that framing of it. I think that one basic fundamental lens is something that is really hard to adopt. And it's like, it's consistent that when you see the winners and the losers, the ones that are successful and getting traction and the ones that are struggling, that one basic understanding, that dynamic, do I understand what my audience really wants? Or what they need or what they're going through and what are the problems that they actually are, need to solve. The ones that understand it are the ones that become successful, right? And so I think that's the part that it's hard to coach, but it is the thing that is the most impactful. I'm sure you see it in your work with entrepreneurs and organizations
Oh,
too.
all the time. Ryan Dice puts it this way from Digital Marketer. He says, you have to give people what they want to earn the right to give them what they need. And I think so many times the church does this a lot, shows up prescriptive, like you need this. Okay. Why? Right.
Yes.
Where's the problem agitate solve here? Like where,
Yes.
like how do we connect in a way that you actually understand? Because, you know, I didn't grow up I went to church on and off some. I'm in the South, and so it's what we did. But until I was 17 years old, I didn't think much about it. And so,
Yes.
and even when I started going, the people and the songs and sometimes the messages seemed somewhat relevant,
Yeah.
but like all the church stuff they did was just confusing. And so I always tell people, like, you have to remember what it was like to be before the church. And for a lot of people in culture who grew up in the church, a lot of the learning gap, they just kind of learned to accept early on. That's kind of weird, but that's the way we do it. But people who are outside the church, they know one way to do things. And either they go in places now that remind them just like what they saw at the pub, is just there's no bar. And I'm not downing that. I mean, I understand trying to connect to culture, but at the same time, it's like, where's that unique difference of
Yeah.
coming in and having that, hey, we're not just weirdo aliens, but we do serve a God that is other. And we want to invite you to more of that. And so I think, we want to go out like, you need God. Okay, why do you need God? What's going on? And helping people understand that profound need that they have and creatively do that. That's one thing I always appreciated about Redeemer up in New York was they were, their leadership was very keen on engaging with culture. And,
Oh, skeptics are welcome there, right?
yeah,
Because they understand that that's what you are if you're not a churchgoer.
yeah.
I think, but I just had a conversation this week, which is very indicative. It's a consistent conversation I have with pastors, where I'll say, "What are the common things when they come to church and shake your hand, or you have coffee with them? What are the things that they're most concerned about? What's happening in their lives? What's the struggle that they actually like? What was the trigger? Usually, it's some trigger,
Yeah.
right? I would say maybe more than 50% of people who start to seek out a church, there's something happening in their life, whether it's a crisis or stress or something, right? Or some life change. And so, what is that? And so, the pastor named several things. A lot of people are having trouble in their relationships,
Mhm.
stress, divorce, job loss, parenting children has just been infinitely harder in today's culture,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And so the next question I'll ask is, so where on your website or your social or your external communications, if they don't know you, if they're not part of your community and they're just looking at your church, where on your website is there any content that addresses or even hints at that you actually can talk about that? Nowhere,
Nowhere. Yeah.
right? Those felt needs are absent. And now you understand why no one's coming to your church, right? Because it's a black hole. It's basically you're treating your website not like a brochure. You're treating your website and your whole church more like a timeshare presentation,
Yeah.
right? Timeshare is, hey, get them in the door, lock the door. We got them for 90 minutes and they're ours, right? And the secret is inside. And the only way to get the secret is inside. You want to get the presentation, and then you want to get that voucher for the free dinner or the show tickets
That's
or
right.
something, and it's
Voucher
right?
for the free room, whatever.
Right? So Jesus is inside, right? The your life transformation's here, but you must come into that room, that locked room, for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever. And I think that's such a fatal mistake in today's culture where the relevance is something that you need to demonstrate and it's not assumed.
Well, I wonder, Kenny, if we could do a better job as church leaders as well of helping fill that gap a little bit of explaining, how to go about doing that. That's something that you and your businesses are really making a point to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And you're helping churches know that, like, hey, marketing isn't a bad word. You're not trying to pull one over on people. It's not deceptive trade practice. You're
Yeah.
coming in saying, like, hey, if this is going on in your life, there's an answer for that. Hey,
Yeah.
if you're struggling with addiction, we have Celebrate Recovery. If your marriage is falling apart, we have our counseling center. Hey, if you're having a time, raising your kids, our family ministry, right? Helping people to, hey, because I was talking with someone about marketing the other day, and I said, look, unless they see themselves in there, and I know you're an expert in those type of things, and you've worked with Donald Miller and his stuff as well, but that idea of, like, can they see themselves in there? Otherwise, they're going to ignore you, right?
Yeah.
Unless there's
Absolutely.
something to, like
Absolutely.
in the story brand, story brand certified, you help people tell a story. The church has the best story to tell, but we're getting pretty lazy in how we tell it, right? I'm on Twitter and looking at people talking about crypto. You see Michael Saylor talking about Bitcoin, right? And he's like, Bitcoin solves this. This is a problem. Bitcoin solves this. And it's like, where's the church saying, hey, Jesus solves this? Like, Jesus brings an answer. Here's how. Here's what it does. And I think, I mean, you're getting me all preachy now, but I do agree with you that being able to connect with those that we're called to serve in a contextual manner isn't compromise. It's actually
Yeah.
following in the footsteps of Jesus. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of all that you're doing, how you're bringing and you're unifying people. You're bringing entrepreneurs together that wouldn't naturally come together. You're creating environments and spaces for people like executive pastors, because executive pastors are unique birds in the fact that they actually care a lot, but they're also focused on immediate data, right? They're focused
Yeah.
on programming. They help with staffing issues. They're able to liberate the teaching pastor and the pastor preaching or counseling to do what they're great at doing. Because while the church in and of itself is not a business, we have to remember business is something God created. And so we can't treat it like it's a nasty thing that has to take place. It's just how we go about doing business. I mean, it blows my mind. I don't know if you have this up in the north, but down here in the south, people are like, oh man, Christians take it as a pass to act like idiots. And you're like, well, that's just business. That's business, man. I'm like, the bifurcation's nuts. Where really it's like we want to be continually Christian and how we conduct it. So the way we conduct business in the church should be how we conduct business outside the church and vice versa as believers. So
Amen, amen. I
yeah,
mean, I think the opportunity we have is to really, I think, give Christian entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who happen to be Christian more courage and confidence that they can basically dig a little bit deeper in their own faith to say, how does my faith, my biblical worldviews apply to what I do on a daily basis? How I treat my employees, how I treat my vendors and my partners and my customers. How do we actually it's small things. Like in my agency, when we do creative stuff, we typically take a gospel centric view of stock photography and positioning of things. We don't do the Sally Struthers cleft lip, photo to get a dollar.
yeah.
We're trying not to be opportunistic and take advantage of someone's human dignity in order to get a buck in the name of something nice and like a good cause. And so I think you want to be hope filled. You don't want to exaggerate the negative sides of everything. And I think you have to have a balance, and there's a tension to be managed there. But I do think that, man, in business, we have so many other opportunities to express a gospel centric view of what we believe, you and I, as brothers and sisters in business, of how we might have not just it's not just more than a double bottom line where you're just donating 10%, to something. I think it really is a completely different dynamic that we have the opportunity to instill and influence others around us.
Well, man, we can go on and on about that. You and I, like when we get together, we like talking a lot and going deep and all that kind of stuff. But how can people, what are you working on that we can share with the people watching or listening today? Where can they find you online? How can they get in touch
Yeah.
with what you're working on?
If you're in the church space, if you're a pastor, church leader, lately I've been hanging out at churchtechtoday.com, the editor in chief and owner of that property, and aiforchurchleaders.com. That's the latest, deep dive in what God has given us in terms of technology that we can steward for good. And so aiforchurchleaders.com is a great community in the training space. On the business side or on the ministry side, bigclicksyndicate.com is the name of our agency team, our boutique agency that helps. Basically, if you're a cause-driven Christian ministry, we help use content marketing and all the best practices to nurture raving fans for your mission. And so we have a very specific methodology of doing that, and would be happy to, expose more of what we're doing, what we're learning, of how to, actually bring more people together to, to a focal point, to whatever you're called to do. So yeah, those are, and then on social, I'm pretty easy to find. Kenny Jahng everywhere. You can find me. I'm on TikTok. Are you on TikTok,
I
Casey?
am. I'm just getting going on TikTok. I'm about to go do a dance later on. No, I'm kidding. I made a promise early on I wouldn't be that guy, but yeah, and these clips will go out on TikTok as well. So yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you're on TikTok, hit me up. And YouTube Shorts. Everybody should be on YouTube. It's 2024.
Yep.
Everyone should be on YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, I am on that as well with the podcast. So, well, Kenny, thanks so much for stopping by. And for those of you watching or listening, thanks for stopping by. Feel free to leave a review. Let us know how we're doing and share with friends. And we'll see you in the next episode.
That wraps up this episode of The KCC Show. Make sure to visit our website, thekccshow.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. You might also want to check out our book for business consultation, available at Lucid Books, or double your sales strategy session at Planify Agency. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.